Hi, I'm Jesse Avila at the Convalescent Aid Society, a nonprofit organization established in 1923. We provide the free loan of durable medical equipment, of hospital beds, wheelchairs, walkers, canes, and many other items. Your donations and contributions are welcome and greatly appreciated. We are located at 3255 East Foothill Boulevard in Pasadena.
We're here to help you!
Please give us a call and check for availability at 626-793-1696.
Hello everyone, thank you for watching CCN Crown City News, your neighborhood. I'm Sehnita Joshua Mattison. President Obama spoke about his jobs plan this past week. Republicans say they have plans of their own, but how is the economy doing as both sides got at it? The next hour is dedicated to the current economic climate. But first, the nation came together Sunday to remember those killed on September 11th, 10 years ago, in coordinated attacks on our country. One determined local resident says he's been working for years to raise a local memorial in honor of those who lost their lives that day. CCN's Gisela Perez is here live to tell us about the new Pasadena Memorial. Hi, Gisela.
Hi, Sehnita. Residents, along with Pasadena Police and Fire Departments and local armed forces, gathered Sunday to support the vision of John McDaniel, a retired United Airlines pilot who has been working for years to create a memorial for those who died on 9/11. 10 years later, his vision finally became reality during the unveiling of the new 9/11 Memorial on New York Drive. Hundreds gathered on New York Drive to honor the victims of 9/11. They held a moment of silence, and Air Force veteran John McDaniel proudly unveiled the temporary signage for a 9/11 memorial, which he says he's been working on for the past decade. Pasadena Police Chief Philip Sanchez says he hopes the community will keep their patriotism high even after today's celebrations.
Rather than being a patriot on one day a year, we should challenge ourselves to be a patriot every day of the year.
Denise Campbell says she was in the World Trade Center on business the day of the attacks. She shared a moving letter she wrote to a man she saw flying from the towers on that horrific morning.
I cannot wait to meet you. Though my time is not yet, I am no longer scared of the day when it will reach me, and that's because of you. I know many people in heaven, and I look forward to the day when I can meet them again. But mostly I can't wait to see you, to meet you and look at your beautiful face. You will be my first stop in eternity, where I can finally take your hand and greet you soul to soul, my unlikely hero. I love you.
During the event, speakers listed the stats. More than 6,000 U.S. service members have lost their lives in Iraq and Afghanistan, and 55,000 have been wounded in action. Assemblyman Anthony Porrentino reminded the audience to thank each and every service member on a daily basis.
If you see a man or a woman in uniform, a veteran, we see the Purple Heart recipients behind us, don't be shy. Go up and say thank you. Introduce yourself and say, I'm proud to be a Californian, I'm proud to be an American, and I appreciate everything that you do.
The attacks on 9/11 rippled through the country, touching many lives. With the help of John McDaniel and his team, people here in the Pasadena area now have a location to honor, mourn, and celebrate the fallen heroes from that terrible day.
It's been said, those that forget history are doomed to repeat it. Let us never forget the events of 9/11.
John McDaniel also wants to create a memorial lake in Pasadena to honor the fallen heroes. Sehnita, back to you.
Thanks for that, Gisela. For more information about the permanent memorial on New York Drive, you can visit pasadena911memorial.org. Well, 9/11 changed our country and the world forever. Its ripples can be felt in our current economic downturn. President Obama called a joint session in Congress to give a major speech on the economy last Thursday, the day before GOP candidates trying to get the president to join the ranks of the unemployed held a debate and detailed their own jobs plans. Today and in future CCN specials, we'll be giving special focus to the economy through debates and a town hall forum. Tonight will be the first of such an event. We're joined by Mike Alexander from the Pasadena Pasadena Patriots, a local Tea Party chapter, and John Furman, Executive Director of ACT, on our panel. We're also joined in studio by a special studio audience, including people from different sides of the political spectrum, who we will introduce to you in a moment, along with someone working with those in the trenches directly impacted by the economy, J.B. Barakat of the Foothill Workforce Investment Board. But we start with our panel here at the desk. I'll start with you, Mike. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Well, you know, President Obama, in his job speech, one of the things he said is that there should be nothing controversial. You know, it has something that both sides should agree with. Do you agree with that?
Well, I'm not sure what Mr. Obama was talking about, and I'm sure he didn't know either. The whole job so-called speech kept making reference to a bill that didn't exist. What it was for a call to spend more money for some vague idea of job creation. It wasn't specific, no plan backing it up, and the only evidence we have was an evidence of failed efforts to do the same thing. He should just stop doing what he's doing, put his pen down.
Okay. Well, now he did send a bill to Congress today.
Oh, he did? Okay. All right. Well, I missed that, but I'm sure it's more of the same.
Okay. Well, let's check in with you, John. Thanks for being here as well.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Sehnita. What did you think of the jobs plan Obama introduced?
I thought the president's speech was excellent. I thought his job plan is strong, and in fact, he does have a plan. Mike might have missed it. Mike might have missed a lot of stuff in the last few years, it seems to me. But I think the key point is that the types of stimulus packages that the Congress enacted in 2009 did make a difference. That didn't undo the effects of the recession we're in, but it made it much less bad. It kept jobs at least a minimum level. We've seen modest job growth since 2009 compared to the enormous job losses we had in 2008 and the beginning of 2009. So it's made a difference, and I think the new plan will make more of a difference, and I think the president knows what he's doing, and I think he's on the right course.
Okay. Well, one of the things he was a bit vague about, he said that it would definitely be paid for. It would not add to the deficit, but it is a bit vague on how it's going to be paid for. Do you think this is going to be just $450 billion added to the deficit?
First of all, from my perspective, if it is $450 billion added to the deficit, that's okay. We ought to be spending money. This is classic Keynesian economics. When you're in a recession, the government spends money to prime the pump. When we're in good times, you pay off the deficit. Now, the last time, and Mike may remember this, the last time the government had a surplus was 1998, 1999, 2000, and who was president? Bill Clinton, the Democrat. Democrats understand in good years you run surpluses, pay down the deficit. In bad years, you use government spending to support the economy to create jobs.
Okay, well, let's let Mike address some of the things that you talked about here.
It's difficult to know where to start with you, John, with all due respect. You know, this is misinformation stacked on top of propaganda and complete economic misstatement. First of all, just to amplify one point, the last time we had a budgetary deficit was when the Republicans were in charge of Congress. In other words, when the Democrats, the liberals, and a whole bunch of Republicans have the power to spend money, they can and do. They run up debt, they never pay it back, John. That's the problem. That's why we're up to, what, $10, $15 trillion worth of a budget deficit, $50 to $100 trillion. Who can count how much unfunded liabilities? Spending this money doesn't create jobs, it stops jobs. Keynesian economics have been completely discredited. You must have missed the memo, because everything that we've learned is that you don't raise taxes, you don't run deficits during depressions or recessions. You get the private sector moving again by deregulating it, by motivating it, by letting business invest its money.
Now, there was, looking at some of the unemployment numbers, and JB, when she's on with us, will be able to talk about that a little bit more. But, if you look at the charts, there was a, steady increase of the unemployed, growing from, early 2008 till the point when Obama came into office, and it did start plateauing. The increase, it didn't keep going on its same trajectory. So do you think the stimulus packages had any effect on that?
Well, you've asked 10 questions, 4 assumptions. Let's go back and deal, first of all, with that plateau. And let me clear up something right now. This isn't Bush versus Obama. Forget about that. I don't want to talk about either one of those guys.
I was asking about the stimulus.
I understand, but they gets caught up in party politics. This is about good ideas versus bad ideas. Yes, it was an increasing amount of unemployment following some very, very flawed spending and regulatory policies of the Congress in 2006 and frankly before when the Republicans had it. They didn't do a very good job on this. Create a lot of problems, but our jobs, our unemployment, it's dipped since Mr. Obama came in. He needs to start doing the right things. We need Mr. Obama's administration to be a successful job creator. He needs to put his pen down and get out of the way, deregulate our economy, emasculate that EPA, get rid of Obamacare, and all these other things that are stunning the growth of the economy. It's a very complex picture, and we can't just pick out little pieces of it.
No, absolutely. And what do you think the balance is between some of the short-term packages and ideas that they put out to, kind of put a stop to the trajectory that was going, and then the long-term reforms that are needed?
There is no plan to stop the short-term trajectory because it's more of the same thing. Let's put it this way: we had $500 billion that Bush and the Democratic Congress approved with a lot of Republicans along the way in October. Nothing happened. We don't even know where that money went. We have an almost $1 trillion so-called stimulus, oftentimes called porculus, in early January '09. We still don't know where all that money is. We have no growth from it. The projects are 7% started. It's crazy. And now behind that, we're going to do it to the tune of another $500 million.
Okay. Well, we're going to go to our studio audience quickly and get an idea from them. What did they think of the jobs plan? Yes, could you stand up and introduce your name?
Sure. I'm Harris Hall. I have to say, I agree with a lot of what Mike's saying. I mean, the stimulus plan, the original stimulus plan, I think was a really well-intentioned idea, but it really was kind of a clear example of how Keynesian has failed. A lot of the money that was supposed to go to infrastructure projects never got there. I mean, it was the point where Obama was joking that the shovel-ready projects weren't as shovel-ready as he thought. And really, a lot of that money went back to the states where it did save teachers and firefighter jobs, but those jobs are now being lost at a tremendous rate. So it really just delayed the inevitable. And a lot of those public sector union jobs give tremendously to Obama's campaign.
Well, do you think that short-term stop was something that was necessary?
No, I think you have the natural business cycle where things bottom out whether the government gets involved or not. I mean, when the debt to GDP ratio gets up to the levels we're at 100% of the economy, there's all kinds of evidence that stunts the growth of the economy. It's just crushing to the economy.
Okay.
And you layer on the regulations on top of that, and it's no wonder businesses don't hire.
All right, let's hear from someone else. Anthony Duarte, or Steve Lamb here. What do you think of Obama's jobs plan?
Well, I want to know when a Democrat's going to show up in the room.
Okay.
They talk about Obama's got a tremendous amount of dissatisfaction. He's got dissatisfaction from the left because, quite frankly, he's not doing enough. I want to see something like a Franklin Roosevelt sort of plan where we're going to build national parks, we're going to build hydroelectric dams, we're going to dredge, we're going to build roads again. And, they keep saying nothing, we can't see anything out of the stimulus plan. Well, go down Fair Oaks and South Pasadena. That was all done with stimulus money. It was done locally. Okay. And there are projects that you can go see.
Okay. Well, speaking about Obama, Sarah Palin has said that, polls are only for strippers and skiers, which I thought was quite funny. But, for Obama, his ratings have dropped recently. What do you think do you think these numbers make any kind of prediction for the future? I mean, obviously, I know you do, but, do you think they are real? I mean, obviously, both sides, when they're talking about poll numbers, are saying, poll numbers don't mean anything. Do you think they're valid here?
Well, I don't know which poll numbers you're talking about, but if we're talking about Mr. Obama's popularity rating or that of the Congress, yes, it will have consequences. There's no question. And no president who has gone this low with this jobs number being below 10%. I mean, that's the bright line in American politics, Republican, Democrat, anybody. You get down below 10%, you've got a lot of problems. You have high taxes.
Well, when Reagan was in power, I mean, his unemployment rate was over 10%, higher than what it's been for Obama. So he had to deal with the same thing. He was able to turn it around. Do you think, given time, which is what Reagan needed, there is going to be a turnaround? And I'm going to ask a question of Mr. Furman, but I'll let you answer that quickly.
Well, back to Mr. Reagan, he was in office, not in power, an important distinction in our Constitution.
Okay,
there's some who would like Mr. Obama in power. He's merely in office. But that unemployment, I don't know if it was over 10%, 15 months out, but clearly by the time Mr. Reagan had started in, the job growth had begun, and that's something that we haven't seen. I'm just being a fair observer here with Mr. Obama. I think he's got trouble. Okay, what do you think, John? Do you think he has trouble?
I think people are worried, but they're worried about the broader government. President Obama's poll numbers have gone down. The Congress's poll numbers have gone even down further. People are looking for jobs, and I think within 6 to 9 months you will see substantially larger job growth. And I think if that doesn't happen, I think the president will be in trouble. On the other hand, the question is, who is running against him? And once that gets added into the equation, suddenly many people may think, well, gee, President Obama looks a whole lot better now. But I think he'll go on to an easy election because I think his policies are right. Let me amplify a bit on what Mike talked about a little earlier on Keynesian economics. It is true that if you spend money in bad times and you also spend money in good times, that's not going to work. The last Democratic president we had spent money in bad times, and when times get good, when times turned around, he had a budget surplus. He was starting to pay down the debt. In 2001, when President Bush came in, that surplus went away in part because of 9/11 and in part because of the Afghan war, in part because of the dot-com bust, but also in large part because of the Bush tax cuts. And I don't believe that simply cutting taxes is going to stimulate jobs. Okay. Well, I think the tax levels now are so low that we ought to be increasing taxes on the upper income, and that will help both reduce the deficit, and you will still see job creation.
Okay. Well, let's move on to job creation as we've been talking about it. Everybody's talking about the most recent unemployment report showing that there was no job growth in August and unemployment rate at 9.1%. Do you think that the government can create an environment for job creation?
It's hard. Many of the typical levers that the government uses have already been used, pretty much maxed out. For instance, on the monetary policy that the Federal Reserve controls. Well, they control interest rates. Well, interest rates are pretty much at zero right now for the Fed. You can't go much lower than that. They control the growth of the money supply. Well, they've been buying up distressed assets and bonds. They've been pretty much as stimulative as they can reasonably be. So we really don't have much room left on the monetary side. On the fiscal side, we've got tax rates. We can't cut tax rates much below what they are. We should be raising tax rates. We can spend more money, and that's exactly what the president is planning to do. And I think you saw it had positive results, not huge, overwhelming results, but it did have positive results in 2009. We do know where all the money is, contrary to Mike's statements. If you bother to look at the fine print and all the details of the government reports, you can trace every dollar that's spent.
What about you? You're with the Tea Party. Do you think that the government has a role in creating an environment for job creation?
Well, these days it has a negative role. That is, most of what it does is negative about towards job growth, and the best thing that it could do is negative, which is nothing and less than nothing. Started doing a heck of a lot less, moving back from it and getting out of the way. You know, you have no idea how destructive the so-called Obamacare is. Nobody knows what's in there. There's a lot of money that's gone out to big business and huge financial interests throughout the world, and our international monetary system is in a shambles. We're in a state of international economic collapse as we speak here, and the most dangerous thing we can do is to destabilize it further by putting a demand out there for $500 billion in money. Where are we going to get it? From our Chinese friends? How much do they have left? This is the same moment that Germany is tottering. Italy's trying to do a deal with China. There just can't be that much left. We're in deep, deep, deep trouble, and we're just nibbling at the edges. These kinds of things, John, I'm speaking just one citizen to another, not as a partisan. Man, these things are not going to work. And the candidates, Republican candidates, just nibbling around the edges. Mr. Obama is dancing, fiddling while Rome burns. You know, we're in deep trouble, and these gimmicks aren't going to work. We need radical reform.
Well, I don't think any of us here don't think that, don't take this seriously, that we do know we're in some sort of trouble, and we need candidates to step up and give us the plans that are going to turn things around. So that's part of why we're having this discussion. I think it's really important. So I wanted to go out to the audience, and also, do you think that Obama's plan has enough in it to rev up the economy? And I'll start with you, Anthony.
Well, thank you.
You can introduce yourself as well.
My name is Anthony Duarte. First off, I want to go back to the poll numbers, which is what's gone wrong with Washington today. We have Republicans and Democrats both worrying about the poll numbers, that they can't get anything done. No one's willing to roll up their sleeves, work together to get something done in Washington. I want to applaud President Obama for actually introducing a jobs bill today. We have Republicans in leadership for the last 250 days who've yet to introduce a jobs bill. But we hear a lot about deficit spending, we hear about cutting, we hear attacks on Obamacare, we hear attacks on the stimulus, but where's their jobs plan after 250 days in leadership? That's what I'm asking for.
Okay. And we'll go right next door to you with JB. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Sehnita.
I know there's been a lot of employment numbers thrown around, and so we'd love your input on that.
Wow. It is so easy to sit around and talk about bills that are being passed and who's right and who's wrong and what president did what and how the economy, and go back to economic theories. But when you are in the trenches with the people who are looking for work, the story is completely different. Actually, the people who I work with day in, day out, don't care who's making the decision. They do not care where it's going to come from. All they care about is who's going to pay the mortgage and who's going to keep the kids in school, and how they're going to keep, their car and their pay their medical expenses. Looking at it, it's been quite a ride for a few years. I've been in workforce and economic development for many years. I've seen the good times and the bad times, but I've also seen governments sit back when things are pretty and wonderful, and we kick back, put our feet up, and don't look at what's happening. The country right now is in a and it has been for a couple of years, in a reactive mode, because we forgot at some point along the line, whether Democrats or Republicans, how to be proactive and how to keep America at the face of everything, and how to have people look at us and say, oh my God, those people across the Atlantic, look what they're doing. Now we're sitting around looking at other countries, and we're calling it globalization, and inside we are all saying, oh my God, look what's happening in Asia and look what's happening in Europe. I say all that to say is that looking at the unemployment rates, and particularly, I have not seen it this high in Pasadena or San Gabriel Valley, to be specific. We lead the nation. We're above the nation in unemployment as far as the state of California. Where we're going with that. But also, I like to talk about the good things that are happening. If we look at the reports that came out of the Employment Development Department and Department of Labor the past couple months, we see jobs out there. We see employers hiring. So we're not only waiting on these $500 billion to solve our problems. I don't think it will in the short run.
Well, we're definitely going to come back to you as
Okay.
well with, talking about the local economy and looking at the jobs that are being created, the real numbers. We'll move on to some of the other issues that are dividing the parties. Now, Mike, the president did propose some tax cuts. I think he was trying to at least, find some common ground with conservatives. But do you think they address conservative concerns? Do you think the payroll tax, what do you think about that?
Which provision?
For individuals and small businesses.
Did he make some continuing what?
Continuing the 2% reduction in the payroll tax.
Yeah. That would be okay. Any reduction in taxes is generally a good thing, but that's not a very well designed reduction, because it means that there's going to be less contribution to Social Security, which is a broken system. So that system needs to be addressed, probably through privatization and replacing it with defined contribution. So, I mean, the idea of cutting back taxes, that's a good thing, but that's the wrong way to cut taxes. You need to cut it in other ways.
Now, absolutely. Why don't I let you respond first?
I think that's one of the best ways we ought to be cutting taxes. People who pay payroll taxes pay 6.5% or 6.25% on the first $100,000 they earn. Above that, they don't pay any payroll taxes. So by reducing payroll taxes by 2%, you're biasing the tax cuts toward individuals at the lower end of the economic spectrum, the people that really need help. People who are making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year, they don't need help. They're still getting 2% less on their payroll tax on the first $100,000.
That puts cash in their pocket, there's no question, but it's a misuse of that tax device.
And we'll come back and talk about this a little bit more. We need to take a quick break, and we'll come back with Rick, Mitt, Michelle, and the rest. We'll talk about the candidates so far for next year's presidential elections. You're watching CCN Crown City News. Your news, your neighborhood. We'll be right back.
It's that time again. The Pasadena chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, along with AIDS Service Center, would like to invite you to our 4th annual Health Summit. It's free at the Jackie Robinson Center.
It's important for people to come to this event because we get one body to last us throughout our lives. It's important that we take control of our health destiny and take advantage of the free services that we're offering so we'll know our status. We are also extremely excited as Mother Love will be joining us and be our guest speaker at 11 a.m.
So join us Saturday, September 24th at the Jackie Robinson Center, 1020 North Fair Oaks, from 10 to 2. The entire community of Pasadena is expected to be there, and that includes you.
G morning, sunshine. Wakey, wakey. Text me back. Hey, did you tell your parents about us? Let's skip first period together. Did you get all my texts? Is practice over yet? Where are you at? Are you with your friends? That's L-A-A-A-A-M-M-E-E-E. Capital X, lowercase o, capital X, lowercase o. I love you. JK, I hate you. JK. Are you ignoring me? We're in a huge fight right now. Is this something I did? I can see your lights on. I'm coming over. What'd you dream about? Me? I'm lonely. Holla back. Holla back. Let's try something new. Nude pics. Send me some. Text me.
My joints ache so bad, I wake up in pain every day. I want to know why.
I want to know why my hair is falling out. How did this happen?
How did this happen? A little pain in my knee. That's how it started.
That's how it started. This rash on my face, now it's like my body is attacking me. I want answers.
When you don't have the right answers, it may be time to ask your doctor the right question.
Could I have lupus?
Do you have a great business idea? The Pasadena Enterprise Zone can help. Pasadena Enterprise Zone. Open for business.
Welcome back to the special edition of CCN Crown City News. We're talking about the economy today. We're going to talk a little bit about spending cuts and what taxpayers should and shouldn't be paying for. Tea Partyists say that we need to return to the basics of the Constitution when we're talking about spending. And we know that the Constitution calls for providing for common defense. I think that's something that we can agree on, or military spending as it is. But the preamble also lists the need to promote the general welfare. Now, welfare in the context that the Constitution is talking about obviously doesn't refer to a government program as we currently think of it when we're talking about politics. But what I want to briefly ask both of you, we have Mike Alexander from the Pasadena Patriots local Tea Party group, and John Furman from ACT Pasadena, or ACT on its own. And I want to ask both of you to briefly tell me, what do you think the general welfare encompasses for you? And I'll start with you, John.
Okay. The Constitution, the preamble to the Constitution talks about providing for a common defense and promoting the general welfare. That's broad, not very specific, and in contrast to the 10th Amendment, which says
we have 30 seconds here,
okay,
so we need
reserving
to do
things for the states. I think that says the federal government has an important role and can do things for all the people that individual states, individual localities can't do for themselves, and that sometimes the people can't do for themselves.
Okay. Mike, what about you? What does the general welfare encompass for you?
I think the general welfare is just that. It's a general statement. It's a preamble. It is not a prescription. And that is dangerous nonsense, and it's controlled our country here for a long time.
Yeah.
What it means to me is exactly what it says, is designed to provide for the common welfare of the states. It's more of a sentiment than a prescription. Hang on, let's go, hold it. Let's not move on. The Constitution is more than anything else a set of enumerated powers delegated to two or three, to the three branches of government. What the government can do is contained in those provisions. Pay close attention, not in the preamble. Preamble provides no power to the federal government or to any entity within it, only the enumerated powers. And this is where 99% of our problems have come in the last 100 years.
Okay. Well, you know, I definitely know that the preamble isn't, you know, it's not a rule or an order or anything like that. So I just wanted to, I think it's important when we're talking about spending cuts for all of us to realize, because, you know, we've been talking a lot about the philosophical differences of each party, and is there such a divide that we can't, you know, come together with? So I think people on both sides of it have different ideas of what a statement like that means, what they want to see in their community or don't want to see in their community, and both sides have, I think, a very clear idea of that. So that's what I was trying to get at with that question, because I think it's important for us to really figure out what that means to us.
And I think there is a pretty stark difference. You look at, say, specific enumerated powers like the Commerce Clause. The government can make laws controlling interstate commerce. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you look at the preamble, you may get a flavor for what they were talking about. And interstate commerce is interpreted broadly. Mike would like to have it interpreted rather narrowly.
Very narrowly.
Well, what about things like...
And that goes right to Obamacare as an example. Is it legal, is it constitutional for the government to require an individual to pay a tax if they don't buy health care insurance?
Or things, with even things like public libraries, public education. Is that something that general welfare encompasses or not?
Well, the general welfare clause, let's go back again, class. The general welfare phrase in the preamble means nothing. It has no constitutional significance. Hang on.
No, I'm not talking about constitutional significance, except the founders were very specific about all of the wording they did choose in the Constitution. It's something that we respect and revere. So they had a preamble kind of introducing why they are having these articles. And so if that encompasses their idea for the Constitution, it is very important to not dismiss that. It's something that we repeat, we the people. What do we the people believe our Constitution calls for.
Well, now you're arguing with me again.
No, I just want you to
well, she should, because you're wrong.
I don't want you to dismiss those words that I think are very important.
Well, of course they're important words. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, we'll go to the audience. What about for some of you in the audience? What does general welfare mean to you? Okay.
Well, I was just going to address your very specific point. We don't have to speculate what the founders thought, what they meant. I mean, we have the Federalist Papers. We have James Mattison saying very specifically there was an issue where the Congress was debating giving money for some cause. And he came up and said quite specifically, I cannot lay my hand on that part of the Constitution that allows you to spend your constituents' money for this beneficial cause. So they understood it.
But what does that mean specifically to you?
What it means is that the founders understood it as a limiting document.
Okay.
Very much, and that was never in question. Now, if we today want to reinterpret that, I understand that.
No, I guess I with this question, what I'm trying to get at is what is included and what is now. So let me actually ask some people that haven't had a chance to speak so far. We have Guillermo in the back row.
I'm ignorant about all that.
Okay. How about you? Is Eric?
Don't have a comment right now.
Okay. Well, I know Steve. You always have a comment, so let's give you a chance for a second. And very quickly, this is let's not have a thesis about this.
Oh.
No.
The framers were very, very clear that the general welfare was part of the legislative intent of the Constitution. It did provide for things like the Erie Canal, ports, roads. It was used to finance infrastructure. They did this from the 1790s all the way forward in our country's history. There's no question about that.
Okay.
Well, there is.
No,
they did. But let's be clear.
About whether they should have, but what they did is very clear.
Okay.
Yeah. The question before us is where did the power to do that derive from? Which part of the Constitution? It did not derive from the general welfare phrase in the preamble. It derives from the Commerce Clause and from other enumerated powers. It doesn't come from the general welfare clause, because if you say that, the Constitution has no specific meaning. It's no longer a constitution.
Well, that's what Marbury and Mattison claims anyway.
Well, I think this is getting a little farther than we wanted to. We didn't necessarily want a history lesson on the Constitution. I think it's just really important for us to think about, what we do want to spend our taxpayer money on and what we don't. And obviously that's kind of why we are having such a divide, because people think different things about that. And so I think it's really important to kind of come to terms with what we want to include in that common taxpayer bucket. But let's turn a little to revenues. Now, going back to the economy and our economy right here at hand, not for our founders, but for a lot of liberals right now, increasing, it's not just about spending cuts. They're saying that the only way to turn around this economy is by bringing in revenues, meaning taxes.
Well, it's a combination of both, and I'd go back in history a little bit to
not too far.
1993, President Clinton's historic achievement, $250 billion in spending cuts, matched with $250 billion in revenue increases. You can't solve the problem only by cutting spending. You have to match it with revenue increases. Some people want to do $2 in cuts for every dollar in increased taxes, whatever. There has to be some way we can increase revenue, and I think there are a number of ways that would be reasonable and helpful. For instance, on the corporate income tax, right now, corporations pay taxes on dividends that they pay out. I don't think they should. Dividends should be entirely tax deductible. Corporations pay 35 or 33% of their income in taxes. That rate should probably come down to match what other countries are charging, maybe down to 28%. But if we do that, we should at the same time make changes in the personal income tax structure. Why should dividends be taxed only at 15%? There's no reason, particularly if we stop taxing dividend payments that the corporations pay. Why should capital gains be favored compared to money people earn by just working in factories or doing their jobs? There really isn't much of a theoretical justification for saying people that make $100 million in capital gains pay taxes at 15%, and someone who makes $50,000 going to work as a secretary pays 20 to 25% in taxes.
Okay.
Eliminate the capital gains exemption, eliminate the dividend exemption. If you also reduce some of the corporate taxes and allow that to stimulate business.
Okay. Now, you were obviously referencing Warren Buffett, who had talked about,
Absolutely.
you know, that he's paying about, what, 17%
Exactly.
Corporate tax rate. His secretary is paying more. What do you say about the? I'd love to hear your thoughts on revenues.
You know, when we have the left wing show game, you're throwing out a lot of numbers. It would take an hour or so just to sort out all the different labels that you have there. Trust me, we don't have a revenue problem or a taxation problem per se. We have a spending problem that keeps us perpetually behind the game. We simply spend too much money. And all this money that you folks are talking about spending that you think is out there, that's money that belongs to your grandchildren and to their children. We've destroyed the future of our children, the future generations. That money is gone. We're going to have to address it. It simply isn't available for your social engineering schemes here. And we can fine-tune this taxation system. Why not take it all? You know, which is what you're proposing. We don't have anything left. What's our property rights here? Is there any limit to this man's appetite? None whatsoever. He has spent all of my money. He spent all your kids' money, your grandchildren's money, anybody else's in sight. And the end has come.
It seems to me one of the hallmark differences between Democrats and I would say the new breed of Republicans is what seems to me to be an unseemly greed.
Ooh, wow, those are fighting words.
Really, why do people object to paying 30 to 35% of their money in taxes to the federal government, which pays for the defense, which pays for the common welfare, which pays for scientific research, which supports the states, which provides the infrastructure, which provides the rails and the airlines?
And people ask, should they be providing for all that?
I think we get a good bargain for our money.
Well, but people are saying, you know, the government, that's not the best place to be doing, you know, having our innovation come from there.
And
it's the private sector. That's what our country is built on.
I would argue that for many purposes, the government is the better place and better able to spend the money on our behalf than we are individually. Okay. For some things, we're better. But for other things, the common defense, scientific research, higher education, R&D, the government is better able than we individually are to spend that money.
I disagree completely, except for common defense.
Okay, well, I know both of you disagree on that, so we're going to move forward and talk about the candidates, more people that we might agree or disagree with. The GOP candidates have been crisscrossing the state, the country actually, with their campaigns. Many have released their own jobs plans. Locally, former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich visited Pasadena this past week and spoke with CCN's Tammy Devine. Take a look.
Former Speaker of the House and now presidential candidate Newt Gingrich is a game changer, and he's here with me in Pasadena. He'll be addressing the Tea Party Patriots. Thanks for talking to us, Newt. I appreciate it.
Always glad to be with you. It's
Mr.
fun.
Speaker, I should say.
Call me Newt.
Thank you. What is it that you want people here tonight to hear and walk away with?
That we have a real crisis in creating jobs, that we need a totally new approach in Washington to get jobs fixed so people can go back to work, that there are practical policies that will work. If we adopted the policies that Reagan adopted back in 1981, we'd have had over 3,700,000 extra jobs last Friday. And putting that many Americans back to work, getting them off food stamps, off welfare, off unemployment, off Medicaid, brings down the cost of government. Getting them back paying taxes increases revenue. That's the biggest single thing you can do to move to a balanced budget. And so I'm going to ask people tonight to go to newt.org, my personal campaign site, which is just named after my first name, and take a look at what we're doing. And this has got to be a citizens movement, because changing Washington, just like changing Sacramento, requires every citizen to be engaged.
President Barack Obama has a big speech planned in a couple of days. Is there anything that he can say that you think would actually change the economic situation right now?
Yeah, I think it's hard for him to do it because his commitment to class warfare and to bureaucratic socialism is so real and so deep that he would have to give up some basic philosophy, I think. But if he were to look at the Reagan game plan and come to the Congress and say, all right, here are the tax cuts we need, here are the regulations we need to get rid of, here are the steps we could take to create more American energy, I think there's a way he could reach out and he could be helpful in a very powerful way.
My last question here. The economy right now, the economic situation, what would you say to the regular person watching right now that needs a job and for a couple of years has been desperate to find one and no luck?
Call your political leaders in the state legislature, call your leaders in the House and Senate and tell them if you're still unemployed next year, they're going to be unemployed too.
Sounds good to me. Here in Pasadena with former Speaker of the House and presidential candidate Newt Gingrich.
Well, Newt Gingrich is just one of the GOP candidates trying to get at Obama's position as his job. Now, Mike, let's talk about Romney and Perry.
Yes.
In the GOP debate, they were kind of sparring over who created the least amount of jobs. What do you think about both of those candidates and their ability to turn this economy around?
Well, they don't have the ability to turn this economy around. No president does, except by negative action, by not doing anything. Let's get out of this crazy idea that somehow candidates create jobs. They don't. The private sector does. The only way government creates a job is when you take money from this fellow and give it to that gal. You can't do that. That's stealing. Well, number one, but it doesn't create jobs. So these guys,
the job environment.
Right, now, their right policies might actually help to create jobs, and I think both of them have some good ideas. Unfortunately, most of the jobs that Mr. Perry created in Texas came from California. I think California's still the #1 job creator in the country, except we've been sending them to Texas because they won't let us build them here.
Well, one of the things that people have said about the jobs that were created in Texas is that a lot of them are low-wage jobs. How can we create higher-paying jobs so that people are actually not having their salaries go to taxes, to health care, and are actually able to keep that money and help them get ahead versus just get by?
Well, it's kind of a poor question. Let's go to this.
I thought it was good myself.
Well, it's badly framed. Let's put
I'll answer the question. I think it's a good question.
No. It was posed to me. I'll handle it. Thank you. But when you say low-paying jobs, there's no indication that they're low-paying jobs. Jobs are jobs, and it exists in a larger economy.
Well, I think
the real focus here has to be the destruction of high-paying jobs and large numbers of low-paying jobs by an incredibly high and artificially high unemployment and artificially low employment rate. We have 12.5% unemployment in the state of California. We're not creating more jobs. They're destroying them by the thousands. We're lucky to have anything in the economic environment that we have.
Okay. Well, let's ask you a little bit about that, John. What do you think? How can we create the higher-paying jobs?
It's a tough question because the quality of jobs does matter. There's a difference between McDonald's jobs and jobs working for a solar panel manufacturer or a biotech company or a computer innovator company. We have had policies in the government that have encouraged technological innovation. When we get to the manufacturing stage, we found that other countries have labor costs and environmental costs and other costs that are way below ours. And for instance, one of the reasons our auto industry was in such difficulty was that our labor costs and our health costs and our environmental regulatory costs all added a huge cost and made producing cars in Japan or Korea or China far more efficient. So one of the issues is how do we, as a government, stimulate R&D to create new industries that will create new, high-paying, innovative, technological jobs. Another related issue is, are there regulations that add cost unnecessarily to our manufacturing process?
Yes.
In many cases, there are regulations that add costs, but appropriately so. You know, the fact that we want cars to be energy efficient and to get 30 to 40 miles a gallon, well, that's a reasonable regulation. Yes, it adds costs. Right. Yes, it makes us a little less competitive on labor costs, but that's an appropriate trade-off.
John, if we drilled, we'd be better off.
Okay. Well, I had heard, Ron Paul
yes.
during the debate last week.
Yeah.
He talked about, we don't need the government telling us what kind of car to drive. We can pick our own car, but don't we need some, body to be able to vet these cars and safety standards and regulations? So do you think there are any regulations that are appropriate?
Well, are you talking about public or private regulations? The private market has an enormous number, a variety of regulations. I'll give you something very arcane in here. Probably the most powerful regulatory body in this country is private, not public, and it's FASB. It's the Federal Accounting Standards Board. It's a private organization. They sit there. We have ANSI standards. We have all kinds of standards all over the country that are private. Insurance companies themselves, with their rating and actuarial tables and risk assessment, enforce regulations. Unsafe cars won't get insured. They'll get people sued. In fact, if you read,
how many people does it take for it to be determined that it's an unsafe car?
It takes one jury and one judge. In fact, you read.
But for the long-term changes.
Well, you ask questions here. I'm going to give you answers.
I have specific questions for specific answers.
I'll give you a specific answer. I'm trying to answer your question. The question is, you said, do we need regulatory bodies? Do we need bureaucrats somewhere remotely attenuated from our life that are somehow anointed, or they get the incense of the holy water and all of a sudden they have infused knowledge like divine beings? They don't. In fact, it's quite the opposite.
Well, let's take it out to the audience quickly and see what they have to say. We'll start with Steve Lamb.
I hate to agree with Mike, but I'm actually going to have to agree with him. You're wrong, though, about wanting to emasculate the EPA. It's the AQMD, it's the city of Pasadena, it's the state of California. Mm-hmm. I'm a small manufacturer. I'm also a home designer, and in the 30 years since I started my practice, the building code was like this 30 years ago. It's this tall now.
Right.
And they just passed another one just last year, so it's another 2-3 inches. And then every single city in California has an exemption to that, so they've got another 2 feet beyond the 4 feet. And I can't find anyone anymore, for example, who has a glass foundry in the San Gabriel Valley, because it's all illegal.
Okay.
And we've pushed the jobs out of the country.
Okay,
yes,
let's have someone else.
Yeah, you were asking about high-paying jobs, and it's just occurred to me, there's jobs for $100,000 that are going unfilled in North Dakota right now in the Bakken Shale. There are such demand. Their unemployment rate's like 3.3%. There's so much demand for those jobs that there isn't even housing. People are sleeping in their cars, making $100,000 a year. And you see this, and you see it happening in Alberta. You see it happening in Brazil. This administration, which is so hostile to business and so hostile to the energy industry, has basically put the whole Gulf of Mexico off, all the shale drilling, all the continental shelf, ANWR. There's tons of jobs that be created. I mean, you're talking about 1 million jobs that could be created, and it is this administration's policies specifically that are killing those jobs.
Okay.
That's why it's so laughable he comes up with the jobs bill.
Okay.
That's right.
Well, let's get back. I've let it go. We were supposed to be talking about the candidates. There's so many out there. They're debating actually this evening as we're here as well. Now let's talk about Michelle Bachmann. One of the things that she has talked about is doing away with the Department of Education. So when you were talking about having a workforce that is job ready, that is educated, to be able to step into these high paying jobs, what do you think about someone who says that we don't need a Department of Education?
Well, she's shown extraordinary insight. The Department of Education doesn't educate anybody. All it does is support a bunch of bureaucrats, and a bunch of people think that they're doing something.
Okay. What about you? Do you think we need a Department of Education?
Interestingly, Republicans have argued for years that we ought to abolish the Department of Education, the EPA, HUD, various and sundry other government agencies. Interestingly, From 2001 through 2006, we had a Republican president, Republican House, Republican Senate. Did they get rid of the Department of Education?
No.
No. Did they get rid of the EPA? No. Well, maybe, just maybe, that's because they actually do something useful.
Right.
Okay. Well,
Disagree.
and let's move on now to talking about. We've been talking about the national economy, and local communities here are trying to find ways to thrive with shrinking budgets and revenues. Pasadena's unemployment rate was one time much lower than the national rate, but that has changed. We have J.B. Barakat of the Foothill Workforce Employment Board here live to talk about some of the local job situation. Now, why are the numbers here so high, JB? I know you're just getting the microphone there.
Thank you. When you say here, you mean in Pasadena?
Pasadena, San Gabriel Valley.
Pasadena, San Gabriel Valley, the demographics of the people who are seeking employment kind of, are on a little bit higher scale, higher education, looking for higher paid wages and salaries. So that's what we're seeing. Another thing, people in Pasadena in particular are spoiled people who don't want to commute, who don't want to move anywhere. Let's say if we want to send them to, you said Dakota or somewhere, nobody wants to go there and live in their car. People who live in Southern California want to stay in Southern California.
There's a reason for it.
Exactly, and there's a very
warmer.
good reason for it. One thing we are seeing that even though as much as there is talk there's no jobs, there are jobs. And in front of me, I'm holding this. I don't know if you can show it on camera at some point. These are actual numbers that came out in July. And these are numbers of how many jobs, particularly in Los Angeles, Glendale, Pasadena area, San Gabriel Valley area, that have opened. And looking at these jobs, there's thousands of things that get listed. One thing is that people are starting to realize that they have to have a shift in the way they think, in the way they look for work, in the way they present themselves to employers. Also, on the other hand, employers, it's an employer's market. Employer have choices. Employer can hire the best talent for the least amount of money, which is, we're seeing a trend that's happening that way.
Okay, well, some of the complaints that you hear in the community right now is that there's not enough local hiring. Right here with the Rose Bowl renovation, how are businesses doing with that, of really hiring locally and having them trained, offering training?
As a matter of fact, on the 19th, which is a week from today, we're holding a career expo on site at the Foothill Workforce Investment Board on Green Street. And we made it mandatory. It's no cost to anybody. Everybody and anybody. I invite all the community, everybody who's looking for employment, to come in and join us on that day. And we only accepted employers who are currently hiring with real jobs. And we'll see what comes out of that. We have major healthcare companies participating. We have banks. We have from customer service to retail to all the gamuts. When you ask me about first source hire, I think I cannot speak on behalf of the city of Pasadena, even though I am with the city of Pasadena, but I understand that there's every effort that's being put out there to make hiring people from Pasadena. The only thing that I'm seeing in this particular law, there's no teeth to that law. I've read some stuff into it that all employers have to do is to make an effort to hire locally, and if they show that they've made an effort, then they can bring on board anybody who wants.
Okay, and I think Anthony had something quickly to add to that.
Well, I just want to go that you brought it right back to the Obama's American Jobs Act now. If we invest in infrastructure, if we invest in roads, bridges, he's putting the money back in the community and hiring locally. So it goes back to what the president wants to do with the Rose Bowl thing. Thank you.
Okay. Well,
But there's no evidence for that at all. That's just nonsense. Read the bill, listen to another Obama speech. You have to look at the results. That's how it works.
And there are some
There's
results.
no evidence that they got more than about 5 to 7% of those funds made. There's no evidence at all that it's increased local employment. And if on the odd chance it actually happened, it's been offset by the tremendous damage.
The CBO said 1 to 2 million jobs.
I'm going to have to cut you both off. This is a great conversation, and we'd like to have more of it. coming again. But that's it for this newscast. Thanks to our entire panel of guests for being here today. Thanks also to our sponsors, including Southern California Edison, Wink Marketing, and the Pasadena Enterprise Center office building with available space. Thanks also to the CCN crew. This show would not be possible without you. And finally, thank you for watching CCN Crown City News. Join us each week as we cover the news in Pasadena and the San Gabriel Valley. For all of us here at CCN, I'm Sehnita Joshua Mattison. Have a great week.